My name is Dorian Vale, and I've always believed that life has a twisted sense of humor. Take this morning, for instance. I'm down in the basement of my boutique hotel, the Seaview Manor, wrestling with a burst pipe that's been flooding the storage room for 3 days straight. Water everywhere, my best suit ruined, and my phone buzzing like an angry wasp in my back pocket. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The text wasn't meant for me. That much was obvious the second I read it. Don't call tonight. I have an important dinner with my boss. We'll text you after. Can't wait to feel you again. C. Celeste, my wife of 15 years. The woman who told me this morning she'd be working late at her PR firm, reviewing client portfolios until midnight. I stared at that text for a full minute, water dripping from the ceiling onto my shoulders. The sender was listed as Gray in her contacts. Grayson Lyman, her boss, the silver-haired trust fund prince who owned half the commercial real estate in our little Maine coastal town. Well, isn't that interesting? I muttered, pocketing the phone. My hands were shaking, but not from the cold basement air. An hour later, I was upstairs in the hotel office trying to focus on invoices when my email chimed, a receipt from our shared credit card. Celeste had charged $237 at the Seaside Motor Lodge, the kind of place that rents rooms by the hour and doesn't ask questions. "Important dinner," I said to the empty room. "Guest desserts on the house tonight." The Seaview Manor was my pride and joy, the one thing in my life that truly belonged to me. I'd bought it 8 years ago when it was a crumbling Victorian wreck, spent every weekend and vacation day restoring it room by room. Now, it was a respectable 30-room establishment with decent reviews and steady bookings. Not fancy enough for the summer people from Boston, but perfect for middle-class families and business travelers who appreciated genuine hospitality over marble lobbies. Celeste had never understood my attachment to the place. She saw it as beneath her ambitions, a blue-collar hobby that embarrassed her in front of her sophisticated PR clients. She'd grown up in Portland, daughter of a successful lawyer, and she'd never let me forget that I'd started life as a carpenter's son from the wrong side of town. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, I had a receipt and a text message, and suddenly 15 years of marriage felt like 15 years of carefully constructed lies. I drove to the Seaside Motor Lodge at 9:30. Celeste's silver BMW was parked in front of room 12, right next to a black Mercedes with vanity plates reading, "Glyman." Through the thin curtains, I could see shadows moving against the lamplight. I took 3 photos with my phone. Clear shots of both cars, the license plates, the room number. Then I drove home to our house on Elm Street and waited. She came home at 11:15, lipstick gone, hair slightly mussed despite her attempts to fix it in the car. She found me sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and the printed receipt laid out like evidence in a courtroom. "Dorian," she said, her voice catching, "you're up late." "Important dinner, huh?" I held up the receipt. "The Seaside Motor Lodge has really upgraded their dining room." Her face went white, then red, then white again. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I can explain," she whispered. "I'm sure you can. You always were good with words." I stood up, straightening my shoulders. "Pack a bag, Celeste, tonight." "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." My voice was calm, controlled. Inside, I felt like I was falling down a well, but I'd be damned if I'd let her see that. "Gray Lyman, your boss, the man who's been to our house for dinner 6 times in the past 2 months, the man you said was like a mentor to you." She started crying then, the kind of theatrical sobbing she used when she wanted something. "It just happened, Dorian. We never meant for it to go this far. You've been so distant lately, so focused on the hotel. So it's my fault." I laughed, and the sound surprised even me. It was bitter, sharp, nothing like my usual laugh. "Of course it is. Everything always is. Please, can't we talk about this? Can't we work it out? I walked to the hall closet and pulled out her largest suitcase. You wanted excitement, Celeste. You wanted passion. You wanted someone who could give you the life you thought you deserved. I set the suitcase on the kitchen counter with a thud. Well, congratulations. You found him. She was still crying when I went upstairs to bed. I heard her moving around for another hour, packing, making phone calls in hushed, desperate tones. When I woke up at 6 a.m., she was gone. I called my lawyer, Jonas Pike, at 7:30. Jesus, Dorian, what's wrong? I need divorce papers drawn up, Jonas. Today. Slow down. What happened? I told him about the text, the receipt, the photos. Jonas had been my friend since high school, one of the few people who'd stuck around when I'd married above my station. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. This is pretty cut and dried, he said when I finished. Maine's a no-fault state, but adultery evidence can help with property division. You said you have photos? Clear as day. Good. I'll have papers ready by this afternoon. But Dorian, be prepared. This is going to get ugly. Celeste won't go quietly, and if Lyman's involved, he's got resources. Let them come, I said. I've got nothing left to lose. That was my first mistake. I had plenty left to lose, and they were just getting started. The papers were served at Celeste's office on Wednesday afternoon. I wasn't there to see it, but Ivy Brandt called me within an hour. Ivy was Celeste's best friend and colleague at the PR firm, a sharp-tongued woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. Dorian, what the hell are you doing? She demanded without preamble. Hello to you too, Ivy. Don't play cute with me. Celeste is devastated. She made one mistake, and you're destroying her life over it. One mistake. I was in the hotel lobby, checking in a family from New Hampshire. I smiled at them and lowered my voice. Is that what we're calling it? She loves you, you know. This thing with Gray, it's just a midlife crisis. It doesn't mean anything. Then she should have bought a sports car instead. Ivy's laugh was cold. You always were a small-minded man, Dorian. No wonder she looked elsewhere. Careful, Ivy. Your true colors are showing. My true colors? At least I don't throw away a marriage over wounded pride. I hung up on her. 20 minutes later, Celeste herself called. Dorian, please, can we meet somewhere and talk? Really talk? We can talk through our lawyers. Don't be like this. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, take a trip, start over. Start over? I was in my office now, staring out at the harbor where fishing boats bobbed in the afternoon sun. Celeste, you've been lying to me for months, maybe years. How do I know this is the first time? How do I know Gray is the only one? Because I'm telling you the truth now. Now that you've been caught. The silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke again, and her voice had changed. Gone was the pleading tone, replaced by something harder. You're making a mistake, Dorian. A big one. I have friends in this town. Connections. I can make your life very difficult. Is that a threat? It's a reality check. That little hotel of yours depends on good reviews, word of mouth, reputation. What do you think happens when people start hearing stories about what kind of man you really are? What kind of man am I, Celeste? The kind who throws his wife out on the street over one indiscretion. The kind who's so controlling and possessive that he drives away everyone who tries to love him. I felt something cold settle in my chest. And what stories will they hear about you? I'm a victim, Dorian. A woman trapped in a loveless marriage who made one desperate mistake. People will understand. They'll sympathize. We'll see about that. I hung up and immediately called Jonas. She's going to play victim, I told him. Turn this around, make me the bad guy. Expected. What else? She threatened the hotel, said she'd damage my reputation. Jonas was quiet for a moment. Dorian, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Is there anything in your past, anything at all, that she could use against you? Any incidents, any complaints, anything that could be twisted? I thought about it. No, nothing. What about the hotel? Any unhappy employees, any customer complaints that could be blown out of proportion? The usual minor stuff, nothing serious. Good, because if she's going to play dirty, we need to be prepared. That evening, I had dinner at Murphy's Tavern, the local bar where I'd been going for drinks since before I met Celeste. It was the kind of place she'd always hated. Dim lighting, worn wooden floors, the smell of beer and fried food. Working-class people, she'd called the clientele, as if it were something shameful. I was halfway through a burger when Tom Bradley slid into the booth across from me. Tom owned the hardware store downtown and had been a regular customer at the hotel for business meetings and small events. "Heard about you and Celeste," he said without preamble. "Sorry, man. News travels fast. Small town." Tom signaled the bartender for a beer. "For what it's worth, I never liked her much. Always acted like she was doing us all a favor just by being here." "Thanks, Tom. But I gotta tell you, she's been making the rounds today. Talking to people, telling her side of the story." My stomach clenched. "What's she saying?" "That you're unstable. That you've been controlling and jealous for years. That she was afraid to leave because she didn't know what you might do." "And people believe that?" Tom shrugged. "Some do, some don't. But she's convincing, Dorian. Always was good at making herself look like the victim." I finished my beer in silence, thinking. Celeste was smart, I'd give her that. She was getting ahead of the story, controlling the narrative before I could tell my side. In a town this size, perception was reality. When I got home, I found my daughter Mara waiting in the living room. She was 16, a junior in high school, and she had her mother's dark hair and sharp intelligence. She'd been staying with her friend Jessica since the separation, avoiding the drama. "Dad," she said, standing up when I walked in. "We need to talk." "Of course, sweetheart. Sit down." She shook her head. "I heard about the divorce papers, about Mom and Mr. Lyman. Mara, I'm not a kid, Dad. I know what's going on." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "But I also know Mom. And I know you. And this doesn't feel right." "What doesn't feel right?" "The way she's talking about you. The things she's saying." Mara sat down heavily on the couch. "She called me this afternoon, crying, saying you threw her out without warning, that you were cruel and vindictive. And what do you think?" "I think she's lying." The words came out in a rush. "I think she got caught and now she's trying to make you look like the bad guy, so she doesn't have to take responsibility." I sat down next to her, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. "I'm sorry you have to go through this, Mara. I know it's hard." "Are you going to fight back?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, are you going to let her destroy your reputation? Are you going to let her win?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw something fierce in her expression. Something that reminded me of myself at her age, when I'd had to fight for everything I'd ever gotten. "I don't know yet," I said honestly. "Well, you better figure it out fast, because she's not going to stop with just the divorce." That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Celeste's threat and Mara's warning. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your wife is telling everyone you hit her. Thought you should know. A friend." I sat up, my heart pounding. Hit her? I'd never laid a hand on Celeste in 15 years of marriage, never even raised my voice until tonight. But in a small town, accusations like that didn't need to be true to be damaging. They just needed to be believable. I was starting to understand that this wasn't just a divorce. This was war. By Thursday morning, the rumors had spread like wildfire through our small town. I discovered this when I stopped at the post office and found myself on the receiving end of suspicious stares and whispered conversations that stopped abruptly when people noticed me. Sarah Mitchell, who ran the flower shop and had always been friendly, barely made eye contact when I held the door open for her. "Thank you," she mumbled, hurrying past like I might grab her at any moment. At the coffee shop, the usual morning crowd, local business owners, retirees, stay-at-home parents, fell silent when I walked in. I ordered my regular black coffee from Jenny, a college student who'd worked there for 2 years and always greeted me with a smile. Today, she looked nervous, her hands shaking slightly as she made change. "Everything okay, Jenny?" I asked quietly. She glanced around, then leaned closer. "Mr. Vale, I don't know if it's true what people are saying, but maybe you should know that Mrs. Vale was here yesterday afternoon. She was talking to a bunch of people." "What was she saying?" That you hurt her, that she was scared of you." Jenny's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "She showed them bruises on her wrists." "Bruises?" I didn't see them myself, but Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Chen were talking about it after she left. They said they looked real. I thanked Jenny and left without drinking my coffee, my mind racing. Bruises on her wrists? I'd never touched Celeste in anger, never grabbed her, never done anything that could cause bruises, which meant she'd made them herself. I drove straight to Jonas's office, a small suite above the pharmacy on Main Street. He was waiting for me with a grim expression and a manila folder full of papers. "We have a problem," he said before I could speak. "The bruises? You heard about that already?" Jonas rubbed his forehead. "Dorian, she filed a restraining order this morning, claims you've been harassing her, threatening her, that she fears for her safety. That's complete bullshit, and you know it." "Of course I know it. But she has photographs of injuries and she's got 3 witnesses who say they saw her distressed state yesterday." I slumped into the chair across from his desk. "She's good. I'll give her that." "This is serious, Dorian. If a judge grants the restraining order, you won't be able to go within 500 feet of her. That includes her office, her apartment, anywhere she might be." "What about Mara?" "That's the real problem. She's asking for supervised visitation only, claims you might use Mara to get to her." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "She's using our daughter as a weapon." "It gets worse." Jonas opened the folder and pulled out a legal document. "She's also claiming that you've been financially abusive, says you've been controlling the money, keeping her from having access to accounts, threatening to leave her destitute. Our accounts are joint. She has the same access I do." "I know. But she's painting a picture of a controlling, abusive husband who flew into a rage when she tried to assert her independence." I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at Main Street. People were going about their normal Thursday routines, shopping, running errands, living their lives. None of them knew that mine was being systematically destroyed by a woman I'd loved for 15 years. "What do we do?" I asked. "We fight it. But Dorian, I need you to be very careful. Don't contact her directly. Don't go anywhere near her office or apartment. Don't even drive past places where she might be. She's looking for any excuse to make these allegations stick." I nodded, but inside I was burning. Celeste had always been smart, but I'd underestimated just how ruthless she could be. She wasn't just trying to win the divorce. She was trying to destroy me completely. That afternoon, I was at the hotel when Gray Lyman walked into the lobby. He was exactly what you'd expect from old New England money. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. He had the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about consequences. "Dorian," he said, approaching the front desk where I was reviewing reservations. "We need to talk." "I don't think we do." "Actually, we do." He leaned against the counter, perfectly at ease. "This situation with Celeste has gotten out of hand." "Has it?" "She's a good woman who made a mistake. This public humiliation you're putting her through, It needs to stop. I looked up from my computer, meeting his eyes. Public humiliation? Is that what we're calling adultery now? Gray's smile was thin. Look, I get it. Your pride is hurt, but think about what's best for everyone here. Celeste, your daughter, even yourself. And what would that be? A quiet divorce, no contest, no drama. You keep the hotel, she keeps her dignity, everyone moves on. And you get to keep screwing my wife without any consequences. His mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw something cold underneath. Careful, Dorian. You're not in a position to make demands. Is that a threat? It's reality. You're a small businessman in a small town. Your reputation is everything, and right now, that reputation is hanging by a thread. I saved my work and closed the laptop. You know what's funny, Gray? I used to think you were just another rich asshole who inherited everything he had. But you're worse than that. You're a coward who hides behind lawyers and lies while screwing another man's wife. His face flushed red. You don't know who you're dealing with. Actually, I do. I'm dealing with a man who's about to find out that I don't scare as easily as he thinks. Gray straightened his tie and headed for the door. You're making a mistake, Dorian. A big one. Wouldn't be my first. After he left, I sat in the empty lobby thinking about the conversation. Gray was right about one thing. My reputation was everything in this business. But he'd made a crucial error. He assumed I'd back down to protect it. He was about to learn otherwise. That evening, I drove to Murphy's Tavern again. I needed a drink and some friendly faces, but what I found instead was a nearly empty bar and cold stares from the few patrons who were there. Even Murphy himself, the owner who'd known me for 20 years, seemed uncomfortable. The usual? He asked, but his tone was different. Please. He poured my beer in silence. I was halfway through it when the door opened and 3 men walked in, Dave Patterson, Mike Chen, and Rick Morrison. They'd been friends of mine for years, guys I'd gone to high school with, had beers with, done business with. Dave had even used the hotel for his daughter's wedding reception last year. They took a table in the corner, pointedly not looking in my direction. After a few minutes, Dave approached the bar. Dorian, he said stiffly. Dave, how's it going? Been better. He ordered 3 beers, then turned to face me. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. We heard what happened with Celeste. I figured you had. The thing is, we saw those bruises, man. We saw how scared she was. I set down my beer carefully. And you believe I did that to her? I don't know what to believe. But I got daughters, Dorian. I can't be around someone who what? Who beats his wife? My voice was rising, and I forced myself to stay calm. Dave, you've known me for 25 years. Have I ever, in all that time, shown any sign of violence toward women? People change. Stress, money problems, finding out your wife's cheating. That can make a man do things he never thought he'd do. Not me. Dave looked uncomfortable. Maybe not. But maybe it's better if we keep some distance for a while, until this all gets sorted out. He took his beers and walked back to his table. The 3 of them drank in silence, occasionally glancing in my direction. I finished my beer and left, feeling more alone than I had since my parents passed away. Outside in the parking lot, I found my truck's windshield shattered and wife beater keyed into the paint on the driver's side door. I stood there for a long moment, looking at the damage. Then I pulled out my phone and called Jonas. They want to play games? I said when he answered. Fine. Let's play. Dorian, what happened? I just realized something, Jonas. I've been playing defense this whole time, reacting to their moves, trying to protect what I have left. And that's not who I am. I didn't build that hotel by playing defense. I didn't survive growing up poor in this town by rolling over every time someone with money pushed me around. What are you thinking? I looked at the broken windshield, at the cruel words scratched into my truck's paint, and felt something hard and cold settle in my chest. I'm thinking it's time to remind everyone exactly who they're dealing with. Friday morning brought an unexpected visitor to the hotel. I was in the kitchen reviewing catering menus when my desk clerk, Maria, knocked on the doorframe. "Mr. Vale, there's a woman here to see you. Says her name is Patricia Lyman." I looked up, surprised. Patricia Lyman was Gray's wife, a thin, elegant woman in her early 60s who served on half the charity boards in town. I'd met her briefly at a few social functions over the years, but we'd never had a real conversation. "Send her in." Patricia entered the kitchen wearing a navy blue dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. But her perfectly styled appearance couldn't hide the tension in her shoulders or the tightness around her eyes. "Mrs. Lyman," I said, standing. "This is unexpected." "I'm sure it is." She looked around the kitchen, taking in the commercial equipment and stainless steel surfaces. "May we speak privately?" "Of course. Would you like to sit down? Coffee?" "No, thank you." She remained standing, her purse clutched in both hands. "Mr. Vale, I'll be direct. I know about my husband and your wife." I studied her face, looking for any sign of what she was thinking. "I see. I've known for several months, actually. Grayson has never been particularly discreet about his affairs." "Affairs? Plural?" A bitter smile crossed her lips. "Oh yes. Celeste is just the latest in a long line of younger women who find my husband's money and power attractive." I pulled out a chair for her. "Please sit down. This conversation might take a while." She hesitated, then took the seat. I poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from her. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I'm tired of it. Tired of the humiliation, tired of pretending I don't know, tired of watching him destroy other people's lives for his entertainment." "What do you want from me?" Patricia opened her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "I want to help you destroy them both." Inside the envelope were photographs, dozens of them. Gray with various women over the years, entering hotels, leaving restaurants, embracing in parking lots. And there were financial records, showing payments to several women, including a recent transfer of $25,000 to an account in Celeste's name. "He pays them," Patricia said quietly. "All of them. Sometimes it's gifts, sometimes it's direct payments, sometimes it's business opportunities. Your wife received that money 3 weeks ago." I stared at the bank statement. $25,000 deposited into an account I didn't even know Celeste had. Why? I assume it was to help finance her divorce from you. New apartment, legal fees, living expenses while she transitions to being a full-time mistress. The pieces were falling into place. Celeste hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been planning her exit strategy for months, with Gray's financial backing. "This is incredibly generous of you, Mrs. Lyman, but why? What do you get out of this?" Patricia's smile was sharp as a blade. "Revenge, Mr. Vale. Pure and simple revenge. I've spent 35 years married to that man, building his career, hosting his parties, looking the other way while he humiliated me. I'm done." "Are you planning to divorce him?" "Eventually. But first, I want to watch him fall. I want to see his reputation destroyed the way he's destroyed mine." She stood up, smoothing her dress. "Use those documents wisely, Mr. Vale. And when you do, make sure everyone knows where they came from." After she left, I sat in the empty kitchen staring at the photographs and financial records. This changed everything. Celeste wasn't just an unfaithful wife. She was essentially a paid escort. And Gray wasn't just an adulterer. He was a serial predator who used his wealth and position to exploit vulnerable women. I called Jonas immediately. "You need to see this," I said. "Can you come to the hotel?" He arrived within an hour, and I spread the documents across my desk. His eyes widened as he examined the evidence. "Holy shit, Dorian! This is huge!" "Can we use it?" "Use it? We can destroy them with this. The payment to Celeste alone proves financial fraud. She failed to disclose this account in the divorce proceedings. And if Gray's been using company funds for these payments, is that likely? Jonas was studying the bank records. Some of these transfers are from Lyman Properties accounts. If he's been using business funds for personal affairs, that's embezzlement. His investors could sue him into oblivion. What about the restraining order? With this evidence of her deception? A judge will throw it out. She's been lying from the beginning, Dorian. About the affair, about the money, probably about the bruises, too. I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders for the first time in days. So what's our next move? We file a motion to dismiss the restraining order, along with an amended divorce petition that includes this evidence. We also file for emergency injunctive relief to freeze all her accounts pending investigation of the undisclosed assets. How long will that take? I can have the papers filed by Monday morning. But Dorian... Jonas looked up from the documents. Once we do this, there's no going back. This is going to get very ugly, very fast. It's already ugly, Jonas. At least now I'm not fighting with one hand tied behind my back. That afternoon, I decided to take a drive through town. My truck was still at the repair shop getting the windshield replaced and the paint touched up, so I borrowed Maria's Honda. I wanted to see how people were reacting to me, to gauge the temperature of public opinion. What I found was worse than I'd expected. At the grocery store, conversations stopped when I walked by. At the bank, the teller who'd known me for years could barely look me in the eye. Even the mailman, a guy I'd chatted with hundreds of times, just nodded tersely when he saw me. Celeste had done her work well. In less than a week, she'd managed to turn me into a pariah in my own hometown. But as I drove past her new apartment, a luxury complex on the water that she definitely couldn't afford on her PR salary, I saw something that made me smile. Gray's Mercedes was parked outside, and there were people gathering on the sidewalk, pointing and talking. Someone had apparently recognized the car and was spreading the word about the affair. I parked down the street and watched as more neighbors came out to see what the commotion was about. Within 20 minutes, there were at least a dozen people standing around, some taking pictures with their phones. Gray's affair might have been an open secret among the wealthy crowd, but to the working-class residents of Celeste's new neighborhood, it was juicy gossip. When Gray finally emerged from the building, he was greeted by stares and whispers. His face was red with embarrassment and anger as he got into his car and drove away, probably unaware that several people had recorded video of him leaving. I drove home feeling better than I had all week. Let them play their games with restraining orders and false accusations. I had the truth on my side now, and the truth was a weapon they couldn't counter with lies. That evening, Mara called. "Dad, I heard something at school today about Mom and Mr. Lyman." "What did you hear?" "That he's been giving her money, that she's been planning to leave you for months." "Where did you hear that?" "Jessica's mom works at the bank. She said there were some suspicious transactions in Mom's accounts that got flagged for investigation." I smiled. Patricia Lyman worked fast. "What do you think about all this, Mara?" "I think Mom's been lying to everyone, including herself, and I think she's about to find out that actions have consequences." "Are you okay with that?" There was a long pause. "Dad, I love Mom. But what she did to you, what she's doing to our family, it's not right. And if she has to face the consequences of her choices, then maybe that's what needs to happen. I love you, kiddo. I love you too, Dad, and I'm proud of you for fighting back." After we hung up, I sat on my porch watching the sun set over the harbor. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like I had a chance to win. Not just the divorce, but the larger battle for my reputation and my life. Celeste and Gray had made a crucial mistake. They'd assumed I would roll over and accept whatever punishment they decided to dish out. They'd forgotten that I'd grown up fighting for everything I'd ever gotten, and I'd never learned how to quit. They were about to get a very painful reminder of exactly who they were dealing with. Monday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a thunderstorm. Jonas filed our motions at 8 a.m. sharp, and by 9:30, my phone was ringing off the hook. The first call was from Celeste. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she screamed without preamble. "Good morning to you too, Celeste. Don't play games with me, Dorian. I just got off the phone with my lawyer. You can't freeze my accounts. That money is mine." "What money would that be? The $25,000 from your boyfriend?" The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, she spoke again, her voice much quieter. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you don't. Just like you don't know anything about planning this divorce for months, or about Gray's history of paying his mistresses, or about the fact that you've been lying about everything since day one. You're insane. Actually, I'm just well informed, thanks to Patricia Lyman." Another long silence. "Patricia? What does she have to do with this?" "Everything, Celeste. Absolutely everything." I hung up and immediately called the hotel to check on the morning operations. We had a full house for the weekend, a wedding party that had booked 20 rooms, and I needed to make sure everything was running smoothly. But when I arrived at the hotel, I found chaos. Half the wedding party was checking out early, their faces grim. Maria met me at the front desk with a stack of cancellation requests. "What happened?" I asked. "Someone called the bride's family this morning, told them about the situation, about the allegations against you." Maria looked miserable. "They don't feel comfortable staying here." My heart sank. This was exactly what Celeste had threatened, using the rumors to destroy my business. "How many are leaving?" 12 rooms. And Mr. Vale, there's more." She handed me a stack of emails. Cancellations for the next 3 weeks, all citing changed circumstances or scheduling conflicts. But I could read between the lines. Word was spreading that I was an accused wife-beater, and people didn't want to be associated with me. I was still processing the financial implications when Gray Lyman walked through the front door, his face twisted with rage. "You snake!" he snarled, striding toward the front desk. "You think you can destroy my marriage, ruin my reputation? I think you did that all by yourself. Patricia is a vindictive, bitter woman. Whatever she told you is well documented with photographs and financial records, including the fact that you've been embezzling from your own company to pay your mistresses." Gray's face went white. "That's not... I never... 25,000 to Celeste? 15,000 to a woman named Jennifer Morrison last year? 30,000 to someone called Amanda Chen the year before that. Should I go on?" "You can't prove anything." "Actually, I can. Bank records, Gray. Your wife kept very detailed records." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You have no idea what you've started. I have connections in this town, influence. I can make sure you never get another customer, never get another loan, never..." "Never what? Never stand up to a bully like you?" I came around the desk, meeting him in the middle of the lobby. We were the same height, but I'd spent years doing physical labor while he'd spent years behind a desk. "You made one critical error, Gray." "What's that?" "You assumed I'd be too scared to fight back." For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. His hands were clenched into fists, his whole body tense with rage. But then he seemed to remember where he was and that Maria was watching from behind the desk. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "No, it's not. But it's going to end very differently than you planned." He stormed out, and I turned to find Maria staring at me with wide eyes. "Mr. Vale, are you okay?" "I'm fine, but I think we should install security cameras in the lobby, just in case." That afternoon brought more bad news. Jonas called to tell me that Celeste's lawyer had filed an emergency motion claiming that I was harassing her and threatening her safety. They were asking for an expanded restraining order and demanding that I be held in contempt of court. "It's all bullshit," Jonas said. "But we need to take it seriously. They're trying to make you look unstable, dangerous." "What's our defense?" "The truth. But Dorian, I need you to be very careful about your behavior. No confrontations, No angry phone calls, no showing up anywhere near Celeste or Gray. They're looking for any excuse to paint you as the aggressor. Understood. But even as I said it, I was formulating a plan. If they wanted to play dirty, I could play dirty too. And I had advantages they didn't know about. That evening, I called Patricia Lyman. Mrs. Lyman, it's Dorian Vale. I wanted to thank you for your help and to let you know that we filed the evidence you provided. Good. How is Grayson taking it? Not well. He came to my hotel this morning, made some threats. That sounds like him. He's always been a bully when he doesn't get his way. Mrs. Lyman, I have a proposition for you. I'm listening. Your husband and my wife are planning something. I can feel it. They're not going to just accept defeat quietly. No, they won't. Grayson especially. He's never lost a fight in his life, and he's not about to start now. What if we made sure he lost this one spectacularly, publicly? There was a pause. What did you have in mind? The Coastal Business Association dinner is this Saturday night. Gray's being honored as Businessman of the Year. Half the town will be there. Yes, I'm supposed to present the award to him. What if, instead of a glowing tribute, you gave them the truth? All of it. The affairs, the embezzlement, the pattern of predatory behavior? That would destroy him. Yes, it would. Another long pause. Mr. Vale, are you asking me to humiliate my husband in front of the entire business community? I'm asking you to tell the truth in front of the entire business community. What they do with that information is up to them. And what about Celeste? Leave her to me. Patricia was quiet for so long I thought she might have hung up. Finally, she spoke. I'll do it. But I want your word that you'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman your wife really is. You have it. After we hung up, I sat in my living room planning the final act of this drama. Celeste and Gray had spent weeks destroying my reputation, turning my friends against me, trying to ruin my business. They'd used lies, manipulation, and false accusations to paint me as a violent, unstable man. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated the power of the truth. Saturday night was going to be very interesting. Saturday evening, the Coastal Business Association dinner was held at the Grand Harbor Hotel, the fanciest venue in town. I hadn't planned to attend. I wasn't exactly welcome in polite society at the moment, but I'd received an unexpected invitation that afternoon. Mr. Vale? The voice on the phone was unfamiliar. This is Catherine Morrison, president of the CBA. I understand there's been some controversy surrounding you lately. That's one way to put it. I also understand that you may have information relevant to tonight's honoree, information that the business community should hear. I was surprised. Who told you that? Let's just say that certain prominent community members have expressed concerns about Mr. Lyman's business practices. We'd like to invite you to attend tonight's dinner as our guest. And say what exactly? Whatever you think the community needs to know. I accepted the invitation, then spent the afternoon preparing. I printed copies of all the evidence Patricia had provided. The photographs, the financial records, the bank statements showing payments to multiple women. I also prepared a timeline of Celeste's deception, including the secret account and the planned exit strategy. When I arrived at the Grand Harbor Hotel that evening, I was surprised by the reception. Instead of cold stares and whispers, several people approached me with words of support. Dorian, said Margaret Chen, who owned the largest real estate firm in town. I'm glad you're here tonight. There are some things this community needs to hear. Thank you, Margaret. We've been hearing rumors about Gray Lyman for years. If you have proof, I do. The dinner was a typical small-town business event. Rubber chicken, boring speeches, and lots of networking. I sat at a table near the back, watching as Gray and Celeste worked the room. They looked confident, relaxed, like they'd already won whatever game they thought they were playing. Gray was wearing his most expensive suit, his silver hair perfectly styled, his smile politician bright as he accepted congratulations on his award. Celeste stood beside him in a red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, playing the role of the supportive companion. They hadn't seen me yet. Patricia Lyman sat at the head table, elegant and composed, giving no hint of what was coming. When she caught my eye across the room, she nodded almost imperceptibly. The speeches began after dinner. The usual boring tributes to local business leaders, charitable contributions, community involvement. Gray's introduction was glowing, a pillar of the community, a generous philanthropist, a visionary businessman who'd helped transform the local economy. When Patricia stood to present the award, the room fell silent. She was known for her eloquent speeches, her gracious manner, her ability to make even the most mundane events seem significant. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and strong, "I've been asked to present this year's Businessman of the Year award to my husband, Grayson Lyman." Polite applause. Gray stood, straightening his tie, preparing to accept his moment of triumph. "But before I do that," Patricia continued, "I think there are some things you should know about the man you're honoring tonight." The applause faded. The room grew very quiet. "For 35 years, I've watched my husband build his business empire. I've also watched him destroy the lives of the women who worked for him, who trusted him, who believed his promises of career advancement and financial security." Gray's face had gone white. He started to stand, but Patricia's voice cut through the room like a knife. "Sit down, Grayson. It's my turn to talk." She opened a folder and pulled out a photograph. "This is my husband with Jennifer Morrison, a former employee who received $15,000 from company accounts after their affair ended. This is him with Amanda Chen, who received $30,000 under similar circumstances. And this—" She held up another photograph, this one clearly showing Gray and Celeste embracing in a parking lot. "This is him with Celeste Vale, who received $25,000 just 3 weeks ago to help finance her divorce from her husband." The room erupted. People were standing, talking, pointing. Gray was on his feet now, his face red with rage and humiliation. "Patricia, stop this! You're hysterical! You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying. I have bank records, photographs, and documentation of a pattern of predatory behavior spanning more than a decade." She turned to address the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your Businessman of the Year. A man who uses his position and wealth to exploit vulnerable women, then pays them to keep quiet about it. A man who embezzles from his own company to fund his affairs. A man who has spent the last week trying to destroy an innocent man's reputation to cover up his own crimes." That was my cue. I stood up at the back of the room, and all eyes turned to me. "Thank you, Patricia," I said, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. "I think it's time everyone knew the truth about what's been happening in this town." I walked to the front of the room, feeling more confident than I had in weeks. Gray tried to block my path, but several men from the audience, including Tom Bradley and Dave Patterson, my former friends who'd shunned me just days earlier, stepped forward to restrain him. "For the past week," I began, "you've all been hearing stories about me, that I'm an abusive husband, that I'm unstable, dangerous, violent, that I threw my wife out of our home without cause." I pulled out the bank statements and held them up. "Here's what really happened. My wife has been having an affair with Gray Lyman for months, possibly years. She's been receiving payments from him, planning her exit strategy, setting up secret accounts and preparing to take half of everything I've worked for, while portraying herself as a victim." I turned to look at Celeste, who was standing frozen near the head table, her face pale with shock. When I discovered the affair, she immediately began a campaign to destroy my reputation. She gave herself bruises and claimed I'd abused her. She filed false police reports and restraining orders. She called my friends, my customers, my business associates, and told them I was dangerous. The room was completely silent now. Every eye was on me. But here's what she didn't count on. She didn't count on Patricia Lyman having the courage to expose the truth. She didn't count on me fighting back. And she didn't count on this community eventually recognizing lies when they heard them. I held up the photographs Patricia had provided. Gray Lyman isn't just an adulterer, he's a predator who has been using his position to exploit women for years. And my wife isn't just unfaithful, she's a willing participant in a scheme to defraud me and destroy my reputation. Dave Patterson stood up from his table. Dorian, we owe you an apology. We should have known better. We all should have, added Margaret Chen. Gray Lyman has been getting away with this behavior for too long. The room erupted again, but this time the anger was directed at Gray and Celeste. People were shouting questions, demanding answers, calling for investigations. Gray tried one last, desperate play. This is all lies, fabricated evidence. My wife is having a breakdown. Your wife, I said calmly, is the most sane person in this room. She's also filing for divorce on Monday morning, and she'll be taking half of everything you own, including the company you've been embezzling from. That's when Celeste finally found her voice. Dorian, please, can we talk about this privately? I looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time in weeks, the perfectly styled hair, the expensive dress, the desperate expression of a woman who'd finally realized she'd lost everything. We had 15 years to talk privately, Celeste. You chose to have your conversations with Gray instead. The evening ended with Gray and Celeste fleeing the hotel in humiliation, followed by photographers and reporters who'd somehow gotten word of the drama. Patricia Lyman received a standing ovation when she announced that she was donating her husband's business award to a local women's shelter. As I drove home that night, my phone buzzed with text messages. Apologies from former friends, support from business associates, even a few new hotel bookings from people who wanted to show their support. But the message that meant the most came from Mara. Dad, I watched the whole thing on Facebook Live. I'm proud of you for telling the truth. Love you. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. Celeste got nothing. The evidence of her deception and fraud was overwhelming. Gray Lyman's business empire collapsed within 2 months as investors fled and creditors called in their loans. He and Celeste left town together, though I heard later that relationship didn't last long either. Patricia Lyman got half of everything in her divorce settlement and used the money to start a foundation for women escaping abusive relationships. She sent me a thank you card that simply said, "Sometimes the truth is the best revenge." I kept the hotel, rebuilt my reputation, and learned to trust my instincts again. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the people who seem the most powerful are actually the most vulnerable, because they have the most to lose when the truth finally comes out. 6 months later, I was having dinner at Murphy's Tavern when Tom Bradley raised his beer in a toast. "To Dorian Vale," he said loud enough for the whole bar to hear, "a man who proved that the truth always wins in the end." I raised my own beer and smiled. "No," I said, "the truth doesn't always win. But when it does, it's worth the wait." As I looked around the bar at the faces of friends who doubted me and then come back, at the community that had nearly cast me out but ultimately embraced me, I realized something important. Revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about proving that you're stronger than whatever they try to do to you. Celeste and Gray had tried to destroy me with lies, manipulation, and false accusations. In the end, they'd only destroyed themselves. And I'd learned that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living well enough that your enemies become irrelevant. The truth had set me free. And sometimes, that's the most devastating revenge of all.